February 22nd, 2025, 11:16 p.m. Princeton, New Jersey, one of America's safest communities, home to an Ivy League university where violent crime is virtually unheard of. In the past 40 years, this prestigious town has witnessed only 4 homicides. But on this cold winter night, something would shatter that peaceful reputation forever. Asterisk. The 911 call came in as a report of fire. Matthew Herkin, 31 years old, former star athlete, graduate of Wesleyan University, was on the line. His voice carried an eerie calmness that would later haunt investigators. "There's a fire," he told the dispatcher, "and my brother's dead body." When pressed for details about how his brother had been injured, Matthew's response sent chills through the emergency operator. What police discovered when they arrived at the Michelle Muse apartments would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Princeton's history. Inside apartment unit 12, they found 26-year-old Joseph Herkin, a promising young man who had been recruited to play soccer at the University of Michigan. But this wasn't just a murder. This was something far more horrific. Joseph's body bore injuries so severe that seasoned investigators struggled to process what they were seeing. His head had been bludgeoned. His chest and upper body showed signs of a vicious attack. Most shocking of all, one of his eyes was missing completely. Asterisk. But the horror didn't end there. Scattered throughout the apartment, investigators found blood-smeared utensils, a plate covered in gore, and a cup filled with blood. On an ottoman in the living room sat the burned remains of the family cat, partially consumed by flames. The apartment reeked of violence and death. Standing amid this carnage was Matthew Herkin himself, cuts covering his hands, blood under his fingernails. When investigators asked what had happened, his response would become the most chilling statement in Princeton's criminal history. "I went into a fit of madness, maybe like 40 minutes ago." Asterisk. This is the story of 2 brothers who once stood side by side as star athletes, who shared dreams and a promising future. One would become a victim of unimaginable brutality. The other would become his killer. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect family, something darker had been growing for years. A mental deterioration so severe that it would transform love into violence, brother into monster, and a quiet Saturday night into a scene of unspeakable horror. Asterisk. What you're about to hear is not just a story of murder. It's a story of mental illness, family tragedy, and a terrifying moment when reality became indistinguishable from nightmare. This is the case that would force an entire community to confront the darkest corners of the human mind. Welcome to the Princeton brothers' murder, a case that proves sometimes the most dangerous threats come from those closest to us. This is Princeton, New Jersey, home to one of America's most prestigious universities and typically one of the safest communities in the state. But on a cold February night in 2025, this quiet town would become the backdrop for a family tragedy that shocked everyone who knew the Herkin brothers. But what could drive a brother to commit such a horrific act? What terrifying visions haunted Matthew Herkin? And why did their surviving brother send a warning text just 1 hour before the murder? Our story begins on a Saturday afternoon when Matthew's surviving brother picked him up at 4:30 p.m., concerned about his deteriorating mental state. Matthew was experiencing what his brother described as terrifying visions and was extremely distressed and despondent. 4:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. The brothers went to the grocery store and then to the surviving brother's residence, where they remained until approximately 10 p.m. It was a desperate attempt to help Matthew through his mental health crisis. The surviving brother drove Matthew back to his residence, where he saw Joseph Herkin, the victim. After a brief discussion, the surviving brother left and returned to his apartment. Approximately 1 hour before the murder, the surviving brother sent Joseph a text warning him that Matthew was struggling with his visions and to contact him if he needed help. Joseph responded, "Will do." Think about this. If you received a warning text like that about your brother's mental state, what would you do? Would you leave the apartment? Would you call for help? Share your thoughts in the comments. 10:30 p.m. Just 45 minutes before Matthew would call 911, his surviving brother texted him, inviting him to go on a hike the next day. "Hang in there," the older brother texted. 11:16 p.m. The 911 call, ***. At 11:16 p.m., police responded to a 911 call from Matthew reporting a fire and his brother's dead body at the Michelle Muse Apartments complex. When a dispatcher asked Matthew how his brother was injured, he said, "I'm not going to go into any more details right now." 11:20 p.m., police arrived and found Matthew in the residence along with his brother's body, which had significant injuries to the head, including a missing eye, as well as injuries to Joseph's chest and upper body. But investigators found something that changed everything. They also found a cup of blood with blood-smeared utensils and a plate. Investigators further discovered a deceased cat on an ottoman that appeared partially burned. Matthew is accused of murdering his brother with a knife and golf club. While interviewing Matthew, who apparently had cuts on his hands, he reportedly told police he went into a fit of madness, maybe like 40 minutes ago. Matthew had suffered from severe mental illness for the past 5 years, according to his surviving brother's statement to police. The suspect had shared some disturbing, graphic poetry to his Facebook profile in September and May 2024. Matthew Herkin is accused of murdering his 26-year-old brother, Joseph Herkin, in the family's Princeton apartment, allegedly with a knife and golf club. He is also charged with animal cruelty related to the death of a cat. Herkin appeared in court Thursday morning for a detention hearing. However, during Thursday's hearing, no evidence was presented because Herkin consented to pretrial detention. None of Herkin's family members were in court on Thursday. Matthew Herkin, the Princeton, New Jersey man known as a star student in high school who is now accused of killing his brother, likely had a mental breakdown. An expert said, "If I was the defense attorney, I wouldn't fight it. I would say, you know what? We think there's a mental issue." Legal experts believe the savage timeline in Princeton preppy murder could bolster insanity defense for suspect brother. Remember when I mentioned Matthew's fit of madness? This statement could be crucial to his defense. Joseph Herkin was pronounced dead at the scene, and his autopsy results are pending. Local and state officials are investigating the 26-year-old's death as a homicide. Police seek to unlock devices in Princeton brother murder case as investigators work to piece together the full timeline of events. Matthew Herkin has been in custody since his arrest on February 22nd, after allegedly attacking and killing Joseph Herkin in the family's Princeton residence. Matthew Herkin, who is being represented by the public defender's office despite his family's luxury living, appeared before Superior Court Judge Amber Gibbs and consented to being detained before trial. He has a probable cause hearing scheduled for May 9th. David Herkin, Deborah Herkin, and David Herkin Jr. attend the funeral for Joseph Herkin at St. Luke Roman Catholic Church on Saturday, March 1st, 2025, in Toms River, New Jersey. Joseph and Matthew Herkin were star soccer players in high school and college. They were both athletes at Toms River High School, and Matthew went on to study at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. Joseph Herkin was recruited to play soccer at the University of Michigan. In the past 40 years, there have been at least 4 other reported homicides in Princeton in 1986, 1987, 2010, and 2021. This rare act of violence shocked the typically peaceful Princeton community. This case highlights the devastating impact of untreated mental illness. Matthew had suffered from severe mental illness for the past 5 years, according to family members. The surviving brother explained that when he spoke to Matthew earlier that day, Matthew was extremely distressed, despondent, and experiencing terrifying visions. Gelman also said he would request a mental health evaluation for the suspect. Prosecutors prep indictment as they build their case against Matthew Herkin. This case will test New Jersey's approach to mental health defenses in violent crimes. The question isn't whether Matthew committed the act. He was found at the scene and made incriminating statements. The question is whether he was legally responsible for his actions. Joseph Herkin was just 26 years old, a promising athlete whose life was cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. His family now faces the double tragedy of losing one son while another faces life in prison. Hurkin has been in custody since his arrest on February 22nd, accused of killing 26-year-old Joseph, and will remain detained as the case moves forward. The Hurkin brothers' story is a devastating reminder that mental illness can destroy families in the most unimaginable ways. Two-star athletes from a loving family, one now dead, the other facing life in prison for his murder. This case forces us to confront difficult questions about mental health, family responsibility, and the justice system's role in handling defendants with severe mental illness. Princeton remains one of the safest areas in New Jersey, but this tragedy has left lasting scars on a community that knew both brothers as promising young athletes. What's your take on this case? Should mental illness be considered a mitigating factor in violent crimes? How can families better support members struggling with mental health issues? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this case as tragic and complex as I did, please subscribe to True Crime Chronicles. We examine the most compelling cases while treating victims and their families with the respect they deserve. For more cases involving family violence and mental health, check out our playlist linked in the description. This case is still developing, and we'll continue to follow Matthew Hurkin's legal proceedings. Until next time,